On this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out, we find out from the panel their thoughts on the Habs-Devils game and what happened. Did they like it? Did they not like it? And with this start by the Montreal Canadiens, could they be in play for a playoff spot? And could this ruin the rebuild if they do make the playoffs? And finally, Kirby Dach, what has surprised the panel so far of his recent performance on this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out? Welcome back here to Hockey Inside Out. I'm your host, Moe Khan, alongside Andrew Berkshire, Rick Green, and Jack Todd replacing Stu Count for this week. Jack, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, let's dive into it. Habs Devils from Tuesday night. And the Devils ran right on the Canadiens all throughout the course of that game here. Your thoughts on that game, what you liked and disliked from Tuesday nights?
What I liked the most for the Canadiens was the first period where they kind of controlled play, but they clearly couldn't keep pace with the Devils, who were like a locomotive. You know, they took a minute to get going, and then as they got going, there was no stopping it. It was, they ran a train. You know, it was absolutely incredible performance from the New Jersey Devils, and if you've had a chance to watch them this season, I think they taught the Canadiens a lesson, and it's a lesson that I hope the organization takes very seriously in that don't rush this. This is what you can build with time. The New Jersey Devils don't have a superstar player. Jack Hughes is close. Nick Hischier is close. But both players haven't established themselves as like a franchise-level player. They're just that level below that. So the Canadiens can look at that and say, hey, look, even if we don't get Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, or Matvei Michkov this year in the draft, if we continue to go through this and develop things patiently, and just collect a bunch of really good players and create a system that values offense and quick transition, we can look like this New Jersey Devils team does right now. And I think that's the best part about that game for the Montreal Canadiens is you got to look into the future of what Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton and Martin St. Louis might be able to build here.
Well, and I think the things that gave them success in the previous three games, they did the exact opposite as far as, you know, turning the puck over, one-on-one battles. It's a good hockey club, New Jersey, and, you know, they thrive on that stuff, and they forced the Canadiens to make errors, and the Canadiens, they played right into their hands. But, you know, in the big picture, they had a good week. I mean, they're scoring more goals. They have a group that seems to be really, really happy with what they're doing, and, you know, I'm quite impressed with, you know, the way the defense is helping out and the discipline that they're having in their overall game. And I just look at a small detail. When you see that the forwards are very, very disciplined in staying high, and the result being is the defense can stand up and take a lot of speed away in the neutral zone. And this is a big bonus for them. And they're not playing a lot of high-risk hockey. You don't see too many odd-man rushes, a few breakdowns, but they seem to be really concentrating on trying to eliminate that part of their game. And they were doing that very well up until the Jersey game. So there's a lot of things to build from. And, you know, again, they're a young team that's learning each and every game, and they're going to be challenged by good teams like New Jersey Devils as the season goes on. But they're going to make the adjustments. They're going to be aware of what the mistakes that were made and improve on it next game.
I thought they showed that they can keep up in the first period. If you can do that for a period, you can do that for a game. You just have to put it all together. If not for the David Savard's painful double giveaway where he gave the puck away at the blue line, retrieved it in his own zone, and then lost it a second time, they might not have given up that goal that put them behind. And they had several chances in the first period. If they'd buried one or two of them, I think it would have been different. But I agree with Andrew. They taught them a lesson in that, you know, you have to be able to sustain that speed for three periods. You need to be able to go four lines deep with it and three defensive pairs. And New Jersey, I'm not sure they're ready to contend for a cup, but they're definitely getting there. A lot of speed. I'll love watching both teams for the next 5 years or so with all these good young players. It's going to be fun. Well,
the thing that's
sorry, Jack. If I can slip that in, no more powder blue on blue. If I wanted that, I'd watch the bloody Leafs.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me the most about the Devils was not just their positioning, but their ability to get sticks in lanes. They were so aggressive closing in on passing lanes. And, you know, the goal that Cole Caufield turned over inside the blue line was called off on offside, but Brendan Gallagher did the same thing. just outside the blue line later in the game that ended up being the killer. The way that they were able to close in on the Canadiens and not give them any space on the breakout through the last 40 minutes of that game was astonishing. It was a game plan executed to perfection. And it's the kind of thing that I think we're looking at with Martin St. Louis, what they're trying to accomplish. You look at how Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki play in the offensive zone, the way that they kind of swim around the offensive zone, waiting for the opponent to make a mistake and pouncing on it. That's the New Jersey Devils, but in all three zones and all four lines. They're so aggressive. And as soon as they get the puck, everybody knows, and it's right to the net. It's right to perfect positions, pinpoint passing, and a great scoring chance. And if the Canadiens can look at that and start building the same idea, perfect. This is a great game to look back on.
John, I want to bring up a point with Jack Hughes. You mentioned, Andrew, about the Devils and how they've kind of slow burned him in terms of the development. Should that be the blueprint for Habs fans to look at when it comes to Juraj Slafkovsky, given, again, he's had a slow burn to his career as a Montreal Canadien, Rick?
Well, I'm not totally in agreement with the amount of ice time that Slafkovsky's getting. I would like to see this kid, have an opportunity to play. That's how he's going to get better. They're using him spottingly here and there, and I think they're risking a little bit of delay in the development, if you will, of a guy, a young kid that needs time to play, and he needs to play, a little bit more. And I think if he was given an opportunity, he's going to have his ups and downs, but I think that he has a skill set that I think he can develop and probably contribute a little bit more if he has a chance to play.
Yeah, I don't want to see what's happening with Shane Wright in Seattle happen to Slafkovsky. Either play him or send him to Laval, one or the other. Make a clear decision here, because I understand he was coming back from the suspension and stuff, but moving around side to side, line to line, and in very few minutes, I think it's the worst thing they can do for him. I hope it's a one-off with last night.
I think my idea with Slafkovsky is always he's working with a skills coach pretty much every day, right? So it makes sense that they're not necessarily feeling the pressure to move him up the lineup. And I understand what Martin St. Louis is doing by continuing to give the vets reps. We saw with Hoffman that, how frustrated were fans with Hoffman that he just couldn't score. Finally, he continues to get those chances. He puts home a couple Gallagher rebounds, and then he's, smiling on the ice again, and he's scoring goals. And you see Dadonov last night played a very strong first period, got rewarded in the second. Maybe they can get him going as well now. I understand that, but then late in the game when they were really struggling to generate anything and Slafkovsky got a shift and got like 3 scoring chances in the span of like 30 seconds, I was like, actually, you know what? Let's give the kid a little bit more ice time. Let's move him up with Sean Monahan and give Monahan a real shot to pass to.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, him with Monahan for 10 games or something.
Well, bring up the point from last week when we discussed about the supporting cast beyond line 1, lines 2, 3, and 4. Since our last conversation to where we are today, have you seen an improvement? Andrew made the point about Hoffman and Dadonov having that rapport, but have you seen an improvement from those lines that say, yes, they're going the right direction, that you don't have to rely on line 1 to always win them games every single night?
Yeah, we've seen more depth scoring. Christian Dvorak, Brendan Gallagher, Mike Hoffman has actually been a pretty darn good line overall, both by the scoring numbers and underlying numbers. Again, like the rest of the team outside of that top line is shooting like 5% or something overall. So we're not getting the goal scoring that you would expect in the NHL, but eventually that will turn just by a matter of teams don't shoot 5% in the NHL and they're not that untalented. So that will turn. The Monahan line has been Monahan and guys for most of the season. Hopefully they can figure something out there. I feel like Slafkovsky could help out. And I liked what I saw from Jake Evans last night. He finally looked like he had some life to him, but until last night, I don't think we've seen the Jake Evans of last season so far. I know he's playing a smaller role this year, but I'd like to see a little bit more of that fire in his game.
Yeah, that burst of speed down the left side, which led to a chance for Slafkovsky, was more like the Evans that I think we saw like against Winnipeg before he got massacred, but they need that if they can get it.
Rick, final word.
No, obviously, with injuries being part of the game, it opens up opportunities. So the Canadiens have somewhat of a luxury of having depth in their forwards up front that they can insert certain players in, and change up the combinations depending on how they work out together. So this is going to continue, and I think they're going to try and fine tune as they experiment with certain individuals healthy, and when the guys that come back from injury step into the lineup to try and make the best combination so that they can balance their scoring up.
Well, as we know, Joe Girard now out for the next 46 weeks. That opens up even more. So we'll see what happens with the Habs as they move forward in the next 3 games that they have coming up, with them going to Columbus, Philadelphia, and Buffalo in the next week or so. As for the Montreal Canadiens, look, they're off to a great start. We know that, gentlemen. The talk of playoffs is now in that equation with where they're positioned right now in the division in the Eastern Conference overall. Do they have a chance to make the playoffs? And if they do, does this really regress the progression of what they're trying to rebuild with this franchise moving forward?
Well, for me, disregarding the Jersey game, I mean, they're playing like a team that is moving in the right direction. And, surprisingly enough to a lot of people, I think that they're having some great successes in the win-loss column and just their overall way that they're playing. And, the players are not, fast forward thinking about the draft as much as what they are, on a day-to-day basis. And Martin St. Louis has driven home the point of, we're trying to get you guys better each and every day so you can be the best you can. And he's doing a great job with that. And they got a lot of good chemistry. They got a lot of good things happening as a group. You can see that they're very, very committed to each other and determined to show up each and every night and try and make the difference. So seeing, as well as they've played as of late, I'm not sure that they're going to be in a tough situation when it comes down to draft time. I think they're going to have a lot of surprises, judging by what we've seen so far. It's a long season, but that being said, they're doing things in a very positive way right now. So let's see where it goes.
I think they would need a raft of injuries to get back in that tank picture, and we can't hope for that. I hate the whole concept of tanking. I just, I look at examples like Buffalo. I remember the faces when they didn't get McDavid in the lottery. It's such an unsure thing, like you're going to blow a season in order to line up and hope that you win the lottery or at least get in the top three. I much prefer, I've thought since early in the season they were going to be on the playoff bubble. I still think that. And I think it's as useful to get in and get these kids at least a playoff series as it is to get in line for a top draft pick. There's a lot to that. I was thinking about that with New Jersey last night. Okay, they look really good now. Throw them into a playoff series, because I don't think any sport changes as much between regular season and playoffs as hockey. It's just such a different game. Ask Toronto, They can dominate the regular season and they fold when they get into that completely different game in the playoffs. I would like to see them, even if it's only one series now, get them out there and let them see what the other world is like.
Yeah, there's worse teams that have made the playoffs than the Montreal Canadiens, but the common denominator for all of them is to have a superstar goalie carry them through. And while Jake Allen and Sam Montembeault have been incredible so far this season, I believe they've saved about 7 goals above expected in all situations. I don't have the confidence in them to continue that level of play over a full 82-game schedule. I think that's something that is going to work against this Canadiens team just by the virtue of having so many young players, right? So many rookies, especially on defense. We see young players excel a lot in games 1 to 20, but then when it's games 21 to 60, somewhere in around there, around the holidays, a little bit after, it becomes a lot tougher. The grind of the season starts to set in. You start to get more difficulties. And the fact is the Canadiens have punched above their weight so far this season, both offensively and defensively, compared to what they're actually producing in terms of scoring chances. There's going to be trades from veterans leaving this team. Eventually, I assume Sean Monahan is going to be moved at the deadline for a very decent return. It's going to be a situation where they're going to have tough, lean times during this long schedule this season. I think it's very, very unlikely that they make the playoffs. They're probably going to end up within the bottom 10. Within the bottom 5 is probably unlikely just because of how hard they compete compared to other teams. But I think this is what you want to see from a rebuilding team. It's not selling off every little piece and tanking like the Arizona Coyotes or the Chicago Blackhawks have done. It's trying to maintain a somewhat competitive roster, but not good enough to get yourself so far out of the draft lottery odds that you can't move up when you need to. I expect what's going to happen is the Canadiens won't get a top 3 pick this year, but Kent Hughes is going to move heaven and earth to make that happen because they need a top end player for this team. I think that's one of the missing ingredients to take this team to the next level. And if they could find one of those top 3 guys, something that Montreal has not had for, generations, right? Since Guy Lafleur as a forward, it would be transformative for the market.
So let's go with this angle here. We approach late February. The Habs are in a playoff spot, Rick Green. Are they sellers or do they hold on to what they have and perhaps make a run, as Jack made the point, get this young core the experience required so it better prepares them for years to come?
Well, I mean, we've touched on New Jersey, a classic example. Who would have thought that New Jersey would be in the position that they are this year compared to last year? Like everybody was like, oh, New Jersey Devils, here we go. But there's a classic example of the patience and the will to bear a little bit of the pain to help in the development of some of these young kids. And they had a plan, and they seem to be sticking to it, and it seems to be working. So to implement the type of players that you want on your team is a challenge, and I think that the Montreal Canadiens have a few spots that they would like to look at to possibly move to make their situation better. But their overall picture of the basic group that they have is a pretty good one right now. But I think as we get later into the season, some of these guys might be attractive for trade bait, and we might be able to fine tune and get better in a couple of positions.
Jack?
Yeah, I think, you're going to hit that trade deadline with some questions. Unfortunately, one problem they have now is with Drouin. Any possibility that he was going to become trade bait come the deadline probably went out the window with this latest injury, So I really don't know what's going to come there.
Yeah, probably unlikely to get much for Drouin at this point, but at least he's on an expiring contract, so they don't really have to worry about it past this year. It's not a situation where they're having to worry about finding a spot for him going forward.
Well, I'll say this, gentlemen. When you look at teams that had the first pick in years past, so I look back the last 10, 12 years, the average points per season the following year after holding the first pick, 77 points. The Habs right now are on pace for about 85-ish, which would be borderline perhaps towards a wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So a lot of questions right now, but are we all in the same boat that perhaps they're going to be more likely sellers even if they're holding the playoff spot going towards February?
Most likely, I would say.
I think with the veterans for sure.
Yeah, they'll look at who's making the phone call and what interest is out there, and then they'll do what they do best, and seems to be making good decisions on bringing guys in and moving guys out.
We're only in mid-November. The deadline's in late February, so we'll see what they do coming up here. Perhaps in the playoff spot, perhaps they're sellers, maybe they're buyers. We never know. We'll find out with the Habs. And right now, they're making things much more relevant for them as they move towards the winter months. Kirby Dach, he's had a pretty strong last few weeks with the Montreal Canadiens. If you look at his projections right now, he's on pace for 21 goals, 51 assists, and that will put him at 72 points. Jack Todd, what has surprised you the most about Kirby Dach's play so far of late?
I think the thing that surprised me the most was that he can play the point on the power play, which would be really sweet. He's a big guy. He's built like a defenseman. And he seems to be able to handle it. That one slot there that's been open since Markov went into decline is still open. If he could fill that, it would be splendid. But this to me it gives me hope for the Canadiens being able to get a really fine player without getting into that top three, because the deal that Kent Hughes engineered there is just pure brilliance. Getting this guy for Romanov, who I think had hit his ceiling, is just great work. It helps that Chicago lost their minds, but I think he's been the biggest kind of surprise addition. You kind of didn't know what kind of player you were getting, but since I put him with Caufield and Suzuki, he's just been brilliant.
Yeah, I've been surprised by how well he's maintained his playmaking ability on the wing, because as much as, it's a harder job to play center overall, you have more options, right? You're coming into the middle of the ice. You can go either which way. You have less options on the wing. But I think his natural tendency to go towards the middle and kind of play a center role forces more movement in the offensive zone, both on the power play and at even strength, and allows guys to go outside of their natural positions and create some chaos in the offensive zone. That his forechecking ability has been incredible. I love what he's able to do at the point. And how often he just stops an opponent from exiting their zone cleanly. He's not even by forecheck, just getting in a lane, creating a turnover. A puck goes slowly towards the blue line that normally would go out. Kirby Dach, with his really strong skating, ends up there, long reach, takes the puck back, and it's an extended possession. It's startling how often what looks like it's going to be an end of an offensive zone possession ends up being, basically another shift there, because Kirby Dach turns around and gets the puck. Now, sometimes, like last night, he tries to do that and throws a pass through the middle, and it gets intercepted and things go the other way. But that's the risk you take with a skilled forward.
I think it's just great to see the addition of another big 6'4" guy that is, almost averaging a point a game, and his overall play has been just probably a big surprise to everybody. Even though being a third round pick, you think that the expectations would go with something that he has to offer, and I think that he's really taking advantage of his opportunity, knowing very well that, I can play pretty well at the NHL level. I'm going to contribute, and I'm going to do whatever I've got to do to make my mark. And he's quite content in the opportunity that he's been given. And look, he's taken full advantage of every chance that he has to be out there, and he's bringing something to the game. And the bottom line out of all this thing with Ken Hughes is he tries to bring character in the dressing room. And I think they got another one in this young man that brings a lot of positivity and somebody that really wants to make the difference. So keep on going.
Yeah, I'll bring up this point, gentlemen. We're not in Sunrise, Florida or Phoenix, Arizona when it comes to the hockey market. We're in Montreal. In the back of your minds, with the way Kirby Dach has played, and let's say he hits 70-plus points this year and has a phenomenal year, is there that heightened pressure that will be put on him being a young player, that maybe he crumbles in this Montreal market, as we've seen past prospects or young players not realize their potential in the city of Montreal, Jack?
I think St. Louis really protects these guys a lot in the way that he keeps the game fun. He keeps them from thinking about, oh my God, I'm playing in Montreal. It's going to be horrible if I don't, get 3 goals tonight. They're going to make my life miserable. I think he's got their focus elsewhere. And there was pressure on Dach when he came here, especially when he didn't, explode out of the blocks. Everybody's wondering, what is this guy? He's a Chicago reject. Was the deal worth it? We liked Romanov, whatever. And he responded to that really well. And I think as long as Marty's created a kind of bubble, and, Rick's been around infinitely more teams than I have. But you see that when a team is kind of together, you see it. You saw it with the Habs in the playoffs a couple of years ago. You get this mentality where it's us against the world. Some coaches foster that by creating wars with the media and saying, it's us against them. Marty's done it by pulling them all together and say, this is us. We're on the same boat together. We're having a wonderful time. I think that will diffuse at least some of that pressure that's inevitable here. But you're right. It's not the Arizona Coyotes. If it was, they'd be playing in front of 5,000 people a night. So
Yeah, I think Marty St. Louis deserves a lot of credit there. I know there was a quote earlier. I forget who he was speaking to or if it was a press conference, but he talked about Dach struggling on faceoffs. And one of the emphases that he gave to him when he moved into the wing was just forget about it. Don't worry about faceoffs. Don't let it bother you. Don't let it distract you. Focus on the things that you're good at. Get comfortable and do what you're good at out there. And obviously, he's been incredible. You know, the offensive production wasn't there at center for Kirby Dach at even strength, but to be fair, nobody on the team was scoring. But the underlying numbers were still strong, even though he was losing lots of faceoffs. He was getting it done out there. So now that St. Louis has him going offensively, like I wouldn't be surprised to see at some point during the season, Dach gets tried back at center, see if he can, you know, continue that trend without having to worry too much about losing faceoffs. Like he knows that he can do it now so that he can work on faceoffs at the same time. I think that's going to be the strategy that St. Louis works with all these young players, right? Put them in a situation where they can succeed, then challenge them. It's not the old Bergevin style of like, all right, if you're good enough, you're going to have to show us that you're good enough. Go out there. We're not going to give you any strategy, nothing. We're not going to give you any feedback. Just prove that you belong. And that's very old NHL. And sometimes that works for a player like a Brendan Gallagher or a Max Pacioretty. But for most players, you need some direction. You need some massaging to get the best out of them. And this new style from the Montreal Canadiens, I think, is much more exciting to bring young players into the fold and get the absolute most that they can out of them. And it makes me excited for the young prospects they have in the system.
And I think really, you know, depending on the personality of the player, you know, Montreal is a special place. And one thing that I always found being in Montreal, playing for Montreal, is you're entirely in charge of taking advantage of, you know, your opportunity to play and be given ice time. And if you don't want to hear negativity or be criticized, you respond in such a way that each and every night you bring something to the best of your ability. And, you know, that being said, some guys don't look at it that way, but I always look at it as a motivating factor. Listen, you don't want to be criticized. You don't want to underperform. Then, you know what, do what you do best each and every night. And I see that in Kirby Dach, and I see that with a number of guys that they're bringing that each and every night.
And finally, with Kirby Dach, fill in the blank, guys. Kirby Dach will be blank for the Montreal Canadiens. Jack, what word would you use to describe his future potential with this organization then?
Number 2 center and star.
Andrew?
I think he's going to end up on the wing just by the fact that the Canadiens have a lot of centers in the prospect system right now, and they will probably add another big name center in the offseason through the draft. So Owen Beck is a guy who I expect to be in the lineup as soon as next year, which puts a lot less pressure on Kirby Dach.
Yeah, I agree with Andrew on that. Maybe put him over there on the wing. He's got size. He can get in the corners, and he can get to the net, you know, and be effective coming from there. But again, they do have the luxury of a type of player that's smart enough to make those adjustments from whether it's wing or center, and has the versatility and you know, ability for him to fit in wherever he plays.
That's a good point from Rick. It never hurts to be versatile in the NHL.
A general player is the key to any successful franchise out there, whether it's hockey, football, basketball, or cricket for that matter. So we'll find out. Well, the Chicago Blackhawks might rue the day that they let go Kirby Dach to the Montreal Canadiens. But please submit your questions, your comments below, and let us know what you think. We'll perhaps talk about that in a future episode. And don't forget to like our show, Hockey Inside Out, on YouTube, and subscribe to the MontrealGazette.com/newsletter for the latest updates from the Montreal Canadiens. And for bonus content and for full episodes, head on by to Hockey Inside Out for all of that plus more. We want to wish you a great week. Hope you enjoy the week of hockey coming up here. We'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.